Hey everyone, and welcome to the next edition of the Altered Insights podcast. As always, I'm joined today by both Trickster and Kawa. The full crew is back together again. This is 2 weeks in a row. I don't think we've actually managed to do 2 weeks in a row together, guys. How is everyone doing here? Trickster, we'll start with you.
Doing well. Had a pretty good week. I have been diving into like the off-meta world of Altered and just kind of enjoying playing whatever I want to play now that some like the big tournaments I were going to are over, and huge announcements for the US too, with PAX Unplugged getting its like first shout out, and there's like an article now on the Altered website. So yeah, just a lot I've been excited about recently.
Yeah, Kawa, how about you? What have you been doing here in the Altered world?
Yeah, one of my local game stores has asked me to help out, try and set up like a constructed Altered tournament before the end of the year. So they want to do something a little bit more competitive rather than just the standard locals. So I'm excited for it. I'm going to hopefully help set that up. Maybe not personally decide on the format, but give some suggestions for formats, because there are some like LGS owners that aren't 100% familiar with some of the recommendations from Equinox when it comes to formats and stuff like that. So I'll probably help out with that. Maybe judge the event, and maybe talk about different pricing options that we'll have as well. So I think overall, the pricing will just be trying to support the players with some more OP booster packs, because I think that's like some of the cooler things you can win, because there's always that 40% chance that you can open up the unique. So I like to see events like this, and I like to see stores want to push for competitive events like this when the competitive events aren't necessarily around for Altered at the moment. Because when my LGS owner asked me, they were like, oh, is there an equivalent of like, a store championship or a store showdown or something for set one for Altered? I was like, no, but that will be coming down the line with the future sets. So it's a good way. It's nice to see some of the stores are interested to start pursuing the competitive Altered stuff, get their local community thinking about like more competitive constructed decks and stuff like that. And it's a nice way to round off set one, in my opinion. We're going to try and do it maybe early December, and then people will be taking a little bit of a break with Christmas and stuff like that, and hopefully coming into the new year we'll get to explore with set 2, which I'm super excited for. We don't have any specific dates for that yet, do we? I just remember January. I don't know if I can't actually personally remember if it's early or late January. You might know.
I think it's late January, the 30th or something like that, I think.
Okay. Oh wow, like nearly the latest January you can get. Okay, got you.
I think they did give us an exact date, actually. I think we do have a date. I just don't remember it. I wasn't prepared for this question.
Yeah, it's the very end from what I remember. I've been trying to think about when I should post my halfway through Beyond the Gates video, so I had to try and math it out a little bit.
I do hope that we get to see like just more like unofficial competitive events within the community as a whole. I mean, the PAX one will be great to see how people are feeling with like meta decks and stuff like that, but it's always nice to see more of these kind of unofficial community events, because it shows the drive that we as players and we as store owners and organizers have for the game, and then hopefully that inspires Equinox to do like an even better job when they start to do their own official events coming into next year.
Yeah, for me, I found that, in other card games, those set championships type local events are often like the heartbeat of the local community, right? I found that a lot of people came together for those in other card games, and they often had good prizing, whether they be like kind of like winner kind of mats, play mats, stuff like that, promo packs, all these types of things, promo cards themselves, which often went for good value. And I really did feel like, while you did have like those very large events, like, like for instance with Lorcana, like the DLCs, the big, large regional events, those set championships, they kind of act like the pulse of the community, the pulse of the competitive scene. And so I do actually really appreciate that. And as someone who plays, for instance, that game rather like fleeting, like I just kind of play here and there. I do set champs, I do the major one as well, Kawa, we went together. And that's something that I enjoy doing. And it definitely does allow the community to come together and have that competitive moment. And I think that's important, right? And so far with Altered, we haven't quite hit that yet. But again, the game is still early. We're still in kind of like the discovery phase of the game, and that's why something like a PAX Unplugged is so important, and we'll get back to that as well. In the meantime, our opening discussion here is always what we've been playing this week. Now, Trickster, we're going to start with you because you released a fantastic video about what you've been playing this week, and we'll link it down below, but why don't you give us a little bit of a primer? And you gave us a hint last week, and now we got it.
Yeah, so this deck, I mean, I ended up having so much fun. After my recording session, I've actually kept playing it throughout the week. So I'm on a hero that fans of starter decks know well and love, Nevenka and Blotch, and I'm pairing that with the like face card of the set, the Kaibara. So I feel like it's just like kind of some iconic cards that people who are like fans of the game know well, but they maybe haven't had the chance to shine. We got it up here on the screen. So Nevenka, maybe not like every competitive player's favorite card. It's got a lot of randomness here with the dice, but it's definitely something that's fun and exciting to do because with the luck factor, you can do things that are way more powerful than what like a normal rate gives you in this game when you hit it right. So here you see the effect. It's if you roll a 1, you send your card to reserve, actually a punishment. If you get a 2 to 3 with this hero effect when you roll the dice, a 2 to 5, you'll give it a 1 boost counter, pretty much on rate with most of the heroes. But then you get like a really big reward if you get the 6. You can give any character anchored. So I was like, why not just play the biggest character in the game, the Kaibara, giant, both sides, and then if I can just ever hit that 6 and anchor it, it'll just be huge going into the next day. I feel like my opponent will have to answer it, and if they do, then I'm going to have more resources than them, and if they don't, I'm just taking both sides for sure. And to make it even a little spicier, I found 3 unique Kaibaras to run, so they're all much better than the normal rate. I feel like even the 8 cost 666 could be good because if you hit the boost, now you get 7 on each side. You're at least trading. If you anchor it, like that's great, and you were probably trading still. But some of my unique ones can win both sides 2 days in a row. One of them lets you roll a dice and give X boost to the Kaibara, where X is the result. So that could be up to a 12, 12, 12 gigantic for 8 cost. One of the other ones, it either gives it 3 boosts or 1 boost, depending on if you get in the top half or bottom half of rolls. And then the last one costs 7, so it's a little weaker, but it's still a 665, and then every time you roll a dice, it gets a boost. So it's just kind of nice, though. If you draw 2 of them and one's the 7 cost, you can do them back to back. You bring that in on 7, it's a 776 after you roll, and you hope to anchor it. We got all in on the screen, too. I ran 2 of this card originally, and I have bumped it up to 3. It just seems so good. If you think about it, the average return for this, I think it's like a 3.5 or something like that. It's pretty good, but especially with dice roll modifiers, things like Martingale, I'm running a lot of those. You can roll all in and even get up to like 7 boosts for a 3 cost card, which is insane. If you do ever anchor a Kaibara, you could use all in on it on the next day and just do disgusting things. I think I actually went to a tiebreaker one time as well, where I had the option to play like an all in on my Kaibara too, just because I had so much mana at that point. And Lyra actually has a lot of cards that can let you discard them from the reserve for their support ability to make the next card you play cost 1 less, letting you play those Kaibaras even earlier. I feel like the dice rolls definitely bring in the fun, and then the rest of the deck is honestly like strong enough. You definitely keep up with your opponents. It might not be something someone would want for competitive because there is like a random factor in each decision you make. But for like casual play, I feel like the deck was plenty strong to keep up with everything on like the BGA ladder. And yeah, I was having a great time with it.
And how was your matchups against Waru specifically, or Ortis as a whole?
Yeah, the interesting thing about Waru is when you get outside of a competitive tournament, a lot of people don't really like to play it anymore. I feel like people have been burned out by it because it has been like the best deck for so long. And it's funny because like I'll look at like some smaller stakes tournaments or locals, and it'll be like 100 players, 50 players in France or something, and there'll be like one Waru. And when I play on BGA, it feels similar where I don't really see that deck very much. I think if you play it, you probably get shamed in the comments by your opponents or something, and everyone's just a little tired of it. So I haven't been able to play against it as much as I'd like, but I think that the matchup could definitely be very winnable, and I was trying to build my deck to do well into Waru. I have a lot of 1-drops and 2-drops to try and get a double advance on the first day if they don't have like a 1-drop of their own, which I think is pretty common by like half the time. And then I think that while you do have sticky note seals, my Kaibara all have tough, so it's going to cost around like 5 or something. And so most people aren't going to be expecting it. It's like on ladder. People have never seen the deck before. I've never played against Kaibara and Nevenka. So I think most of the time people put their removals into the mana, especially something like this that only hits expensive characters, because usually Nevenka only plays 3 or less cost. So most of the time, I think that you can actually just surprise your opponents and get the win because they don't hold on to the removal. Or if you're going second or just like play your turn right, it's going to be too expensive for them to actually use it until like the following day anyway. So I feel like the matchup could definitely be there. I also have a lot of things like Croupier, which is just like a 0-5-5-5 for 4. And so even if I play that as a 5 cost, the stats are like plenty good, and they can like go toe to toe with like a Robin turn. And so yeah, I feel like I hope to have the opportunity to play some Warus and have it go in my way, and I think like theoretically it should do all right. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of fun. Just that's another plug. Go play on BGA. You're probably not going to face that many Warus, and if the first thing you queue into a Waru, you didn't hear that here.
Yeah, I always find it interesting about Nevenka. If you could pull it up first there, Alex. Initially, I'm always trying to remember the exact text of the card, but it is target characters that you control. I wonder if they play tested the card where it was just target characters. So if you like the only way you could win the game was that you targeted one of your opponent's characters, you roll to try and get the one just to send it to reserve. I feel like that's like super fun. Maybe that was like too random and too wild, but honestly, I think they maybe could have let that text, like, you know, the part where it says you control, if they got rid of that. I don't know how often people would actually want to be taking the risk and doing it on the opponent's cards, but I think that could even like add a potential, you know, another fun factor to the card. But yeah, I'd love in the future, I'm sure hopefully we'll be able to get to do it, but I would love to have just one of the game designers on from Altered and just ask them, you know, design process about certain cards and what was testing. Was it absolutely busted at this stage, or was it, you know, did you have to increase it because you didn't think it was going to be that powerful, stuff like that? Because I will have to say, still my favorite experience from all of Altered so far was getting to cast beside the game designers. It was such a surreal experience, and you know, between the games, they're like, yeah, just pull up the collection, let's go through all these cards, and I'll talk about our thought process of how they were designed and stuff. And a lot of the Lyra characters were particularly interesting because they said they struggled to kind of get the identity of this faction, you know, the kind of the randomness and the dice rolls, and then the whole, a lot of the cards having that 0 stat element and stuff like that. So it's always super interesting. So I do hope we get to have the opportunity in the future to further discuss cards, like even the small thing. Like I would love to know, like I'm sure they tested this at some stage to say, you know, it was just target character, and then you have those moments in playtesting where, you know, okay, I need to roll the 1 to send my opponent's card to reserve. But it's interesting for sure.
I'd love to get the designers on here and be able to ask them some of those questions. And thinking about the balance there of the 1 and Nevenka being able to hit any character, that has crossed my mind before. I wonder if it has something to do with like the cards that let you roll multiple dice. Maybe it would just get too consistent to hit a 1, because normally it's like 1 out of 6. Yeah, that's nothing to be like too worried about. Most of the time, like only 1 in 6 games is that working and you're winning. But maybe with like too many modifiers, it could get closer to like a 50-50, and then that might be kind of broken if it's like a 0 cost essentially removal. But if you had to play all the modifiers to get there, then maybe you deserve it. So still something interesting. And honestly, the modifiers, you never know. Like they're oftentimes not even enough, because I rolled my 2 dice one time, and this was to win the game. I just had to get at least a 2 or higher on either of them to win.
You rolled
and
2
I
ones?
hit double ones and lost
no.
and lost a game. So it's it's like no matter how many modifiers you run, you're never completely safe, it feels like.
Mm-hmm.
And there is the design landscape for the potential of there would be like a unique that, for instance, has an effect like when I go to reserve, trigger this effect, draw 3 cards or whatever. And so in theory, you could have like the Ouroboros out and be like, let's roll Snake Eyes and get this card to reserve so I can draw 3 cards or something like that, right? There's always that chance where a unique might offer the design landscape to utilize that send to reserve effect, right? Where you might actually want to hit it.
Or you want to play it from the reserve, right? Like your card has a particularly powerful effect to say, okay, if this does actually get sent to the reserve and I have the mana available, maybe this is actually a benefit. So there's like, again, we mentioned it last week, there's such a wide landscape of like deck building decisions you can include. So like maybe okay, I'll include some cards in my Lara deck that are particularly powerful from reserve, so that in case they go to reserve, it's actually not too bad. Like, you know what I mean? Really interesting.
That sometimes even comes up now, actually. Like if you play a Trickster and then your opponent plays the same side and blocks you, then on day one you can send it to reserve if you get lucky and play it on the other side, and now you're trading. There was a match too where I was actually playing the mirror online, and I thought I had won for sure because I had like put more than enough stats on both sides or whatever to beat my opponent. They had no cards in hand, but then they used this to send one of their cards to reserve and play it on the other side, and then they were able to trade with me. So actually, it does come up.
It's actually kind of crazy. And I talked about kind of crazy. I had something happen this week as well. So I had been sitting on one box of Altered like Kickstarter edition for a while, and I'm like, I kind of wanted to keep it. I'm like, I like keeping things kind of like, I actually have like a first edition Lorcana box like right there. It's like, I just like keeping stuff, right? But I was like, you know what, digital collection, uniques, I gotta open it. And I think you guys even last week are like, Alex, why haven't you opened that thing yet? Just open it, right? So I did, and I got a God pack. I couldn't believe it. I opened a pack and I was like, there's no hero card on the front. Why is there a unique here? And I'm like, wait a minute. And I'm like, it's all uniques, right? And I was actually super excited. I sent a screenshot to you guys and to Justin as well. Justin Parnell, NA Director of Competitive. And I will say that like, I was super excited. And what's interesting about it is I had a couple uniques that suddenly gave me a desire to start cooking some new decks. And this is exactly what we talked about before in our unique discussion, where sometimes you get some stuff, you're like, this is cool, this is neat. And so I want to show you a couple, okay? Because I thought a couple of them were interesting. This aloe vera did come from that kit, but this is just an example of like, it's okay, it's fine, it's not great, it's unique that does a thing. If I control one or more landmarks, I gain 2 boosts. At noon, I resupply for 3/4 cost, 1/1/5. Nothing fantastic. But what was fantastic was this. I don't even know how to say this name properly. Is it Coronos?
I think
like
so, yeah.
Nunes, but I have no idea.
Yeah, see, all these names, I barely know how to read all of them. I don't know. I have to start like reading some actual literature, damn it, to get on touch of these things. But it's a 5/2, 4/3/3. From hand, for each character you control other than me, you may activate its its arrow triggers, which is kind of like Ganesha, right? Which is basically that, except cheaper. And I was like, damn, this is actually a really good card. I can play out like Sneezer Shroom. I can play out, Spindle Harvesters and all these anchored characters. Let the turn go over and then play this guy and then re-anchor everything all at once and kind of really set up a really strong board. And so like this got me cooking Tasia Nara. And maybe next week I'll be able to showcase that Tasia Nara deck that I've been working on because it actually has some straight up fire in it. So what do you guys think of this one here?
Ooh, yeah, this card is gas.
Yeah, I like the idea of that. To re-anchor your cards, keep them boosting. Like you said, if you got a few rare Sneezer Shrooms, they're just gonna get bigger and bigger and bigger. And yeah, and then the best thing about this as well, honestly, is that once this has done its job and it goes to your reserve, for 2 you're getting a 4/3/3. Like that's pretty good, honestly. Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually legitimately insane, and it's kind of useful the fact that it's 4 in the forest, which might, I don't know, I might be coping with Rin a bit. I really want to make a Rin deck eventually, but that's a whole other conversation. But I got a couple others that were crazy from the same pack. I got 2 Son of Yggdrasils, and so it got me thinking about a Stati, and I was like, man, what if we do some ramp? I have a 7/7 Son of Yggdrasil, a 5/4/3 that has gigantic. If you control 1 or more landmarks, you may send a character to reserve. Okay, not bad. A little bit of disruption there. The order of play might be tricky. Like if you're going first, you might have to throw something out there first in order to get something on their board, for instance. But hey, a little bit of disruption. But what was fascinating is I pulled a near identical card. Same pack, an 8/8/8 6/4/4 that reads, I have gigantic. If you control 1 or more landmarks, you may discard a target character. And again, these are for Braavos. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, maybe I'll run the Spindle, maybe I'll run the Haven and some other things and give myself some landmarks that honestly might go pretty good with this deck. And suddenly I have these gigantic characters that I can ramp into that can potentially have very similar effects. Kind of costs that have like a bit of a stepping stone ladder to feel to them. But I need to ramp. Trickster, Kawa, I need to ramp. How do I ramp? Well, in the same pack, I can't believe it. I couldn't be luckier. This Aja comes in a 3/6 4/3/4. From hand, you may put the top card, both players put the top card of their deck into the mana zone. That's, the usual stuff. But then, from reserve, You may discard a card from your reserve, and if you do, put the top 2 cards of your deck into the mana zone. So now it's no longer a synchronous ramp. You're just ramping with 2 cards. This is pretty insane.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this before the podcast, Alex. It was like, yeah, so turn 1, you can play this to ramp up to 5 essentially, because on the second turn you're going to be resourcing a card. The important thing to note is that on that turn 2, you will need to play a character in order to have a card from the reserve to discard if you want to activate this effect. But as long as you have a card within that discard, or within that reserve, then yeah, on turn 3 you can play this for 6, and suddenly you're messing around with a whole lot of mana. And like you said, Alex, you can start playing these big bombs, these Son of Yggdrasils, even potentially a Kaibara. So maybe a little bit vulnerable to, as you play a ramp deck and as you're just playing these big bomb cards, maybe a little bit vulnerable to removal. But honestly, I think this unique is super, super cool. It really showcases, I'm going to ramp as fast as I can and start putting some big bombs on the board. I think a lot of these, the big cards, if they have gigantic in general, that's just going to cover you so well. It's not like you're committing one massive card just to one expedition. Your opponent's going to keep continuously winning the other one. So yeah, I would love to, between your Muna deck and your Braavos deck, Alex, I agree. If I open these uniques, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna start cooking something for sure. They look super, super fun. What are your thoughts, Trickster? Do you think it's copium? Do you think we're hyping it up too much, or do you think I think this looks fun for sure, at least?
Oh, I definitely think that there's a place for this, and that you've got the start of something here, and maybe even if it isn't quite what you want now, with a couple new cards coming out in the future, you'll be ready to just slot those in, and it'll be quite a deck. I think that the 3 unique limit definitely is holding me in here. I'm about to just go way too far, because I was this Aja says its biggest effect is from the reserve, and you also want permanence. Just play the Foundry Axiom Bastion, play this from hand, you get the double ramp from hand too now. But I think that that's just a little bit too niche. While it would be amazing the one time you pull it off, just because it is a unique, you won't always be able to have it if you're building around it. But I'm yeah, there's lots of stuff to think about here. And yeah, I do feel though that 2 mana on a decent body, and also you'll be ramping into it with its own from hand effect, so it's going to be coming out earlier. I think there's a lot of potential for this to work well in an Itsadi deck.
Yeah, so that's my excitement for the week. I'm maybe in future weeks here. I think I'm going to show the Tejanara one next week, and maybe a Stadi the week after. I just want to do some local testing at my LGS. You know what I mean? Get some reps in here. But yeah, I was really excited to pull a gold pack. It was a great moment.
Yeah, I feel that you have a lot of fun and stuff to figure out. I also have a 5-cost Muna card that has the same effect as your Cernunnos. So if you want to borrow that, get some more consistency going, I could definitely hook you up. It's just a Ganesha, but it just costs 5 and it has the effect. So you could maybe look into that. And I mean, with the arrow triggers, if you're ever doing arrow triggers, it's suddenly really good, I feel to throw the Cone Man in there, because now that's a 4-cost 3/3/3 that can anchor itself without having to pay again Aloe. So I don't know, I'm excited to see this and hear you report back.
And this is where we need the trading and the lending, because imagine you're going to a tournament, you're like, hey Alex, I need that Cernunnos, can you sauce it my way? And I'm just like, here you go, bud. You got it for 2 weeks, good luck in France or whatever, right? And you go and you win that one too. That would be the ideal situation though, right? And so yeah, we've been doing a lot of discussion about uniques and stuff like that, and it's so funny because to me it is one of the most exciting parts of the game. And Trickster, I know you joke, you're all I do is read uniques all day, right? That's literally what you do. Anyhow, before we move on to our main topic of discussion here, Kawa, I wanted to give you an opportunity to discuss if you've been playing any particular decks or cooking anything on your side there.
I haven't had too much chance to cook anything particular, but I really do want to build a Braavos deck. Braavos is the one color that I was a big fan of it when I first learned about Altered. It was one of my favorite starter decks to mess around with, but I think because I was really focusing on a lot of the kind of competitive stuff, while I think there's a lot of Braavos decks that are quite competitive, I just had my mind away from it for quite some. I was really focused on Ordis, on Izmir, on Muna, on Lyra with the Fen decks. So I think I really want to give Braavos a shot, because I think there's a lot of fun things that you can do with it. if I'm honest, the ramping is probably the thing I want to try as well. But I don't know if I can even compare with your powerful uniques there, Alex. But
Mm.
I'll have to have a look at some of my uniques that I have. I think I have a unique. I think it's Chiron is the card. I think I have a unique Chiron that's pretty good within Braavos. So yeah, I definitely want to mess around and try and make a Braavos deck.
I didn't want to
soon.
derail us here, but you just kind of brought up a note from that same pack. I actually had a Chiron as well. I got to bring it up. Sorry, I don't want to just keep flexing this, but
From
and
my 50 uniques I got.
I know.
Yeah.
I know, but hold on, I gotta find it because I thought it was absolutely cracked, and it goes back to what Trickster was talking about the week prior about these like when characters join expedition style effects, like these effects that like have this passive recurring theme. So this is a 3/2 Chiron, which is relatively inexpensive. It's a 2/1/1. However, when another character joins your expeditions, you may pay 1, and if you do, the target character gains 2 boosts. That's 2 boosts. That's crazy because you can play Chiron, then you can play like a Spindle Harvester, and you give it 2 boosts, right? And then you can play a Sneezer Shroom and give it 2 boosts. And so this like zoo style, like run up boosting style deck, like kind of makes itself known, and it comes out from reserve as a 2 cost. So when you play it out from reserve, you can still trigger those effects once it hits the field of play, right? The only thing about it is in my testing, it's eating that Tasia buff, which I don't always want. But overall, I think it's been pretty remarkable. And again, a build around for what I'm trying to design.
I think what I like about this card though is the fact that it's not like dependent on, you know, like you play this and then pay 1, the next card you play gets 2 boosts. So like it's a repetitive effect, which means this is probably a card that's better to come into play in the late game, that you draw into it once you have a board established with a few anchored characters, rather than playing this early. So once you kind of draw that off the top, let's say you have like 6, 7, 8 mana to play around with, you play this, and then you can just start boosting your other cards. If you've got other ways to re-anchor them, that's just even better, you know what I mean? So I'm a big fan. I always find cards like this interesting where they have like this low cost, but they're way like people sometimes don't often realize that a card like this is way more powerful in the late game rather than it is in the early game. Just because it's cheap, people would assume you want to play it early, but this card gets so much more value once you have more, because when you're in the late game, you have way more resources available to you, right? So yeah.
In the future, Trickster, I think what we need to do is have a conversation where you talk about some of the cracked uniques you're seeing and what makes those effects so broken. We'll have to have that conversation in coming weeks because nobody reads more unique cards than Trickster. So maybe that's a discussion worth having.
I'll have to, before we do it, let me know in advance so that I can like get the photos for you so we can pull it up.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's absolutely mandatory. So let's go on to our key topic of discussion here, which is going to be the announcements around the PAX Unplugged. We need to have a conversation about the overall reception of Altered TCG. Now, Kawa, this is perfect. You're in Europe, you've had the opportunity to cast multiple events, and Trickster and I have, you're from the United States, I'm from Canada, so we're kind of got NA nice and covered. Actually, you're on one end and I'm on the other end, so if you do a diagonal line, we basically cover all of North America here. And here's the thing. The reception seems very mixed depending on where you are regionally, and I think it's a conversation worth having here. So, Kawa, let's get started with you and basically, what you've been seeing in Europe with regards to kind of like, LGS kind of tournament sizes, the reception that you felt at the tournament that you actually casted yourself. We'll get started with there.
Yeah. So like when I went to the France event, it was absolutely surreal. It really did blow me away to see how many people were so eager to play the game. It was like the earliest tournament, so it was like super, super hype. And as we got deeper and deeper, like when I walked around the tables at first, I saw so many cool, fun decks and stuff. But then even as we got deeper and deeper, we still got to showcase some really cool decks on the stream. We got to see like that tournament was like the first real data we had on like the competitive scene, meta decks, stuff like that. So like coming off of that, the hype was unreal. The hype was like super, super cool. I think the thing that is important to note about that is to not get caught up on how hyped that was and how like it's worth noting, this was a huge achievement. Having this event run is like super, super cool, but I think it's important to not have your expectations that high that we're going to have events like that all around the world all of a sudden, right? It was a very special one at the start, but I think my honest opinion is the reception for like even just like local game stores around Europe and stuff like that. What I think is the games that are supporting it, the communities are actually quite dedicated. They really, really enjoy the game. I've seen week to week, it's either we're doing sealed or we're doing draft or we'll do a constructed. And I think a big part of what is keeping that dedicated player base returning to the game is, in my opinion, I actually think that the incentive to play Altered week to week is higher than any other TCG I've played. Like getting these OP booster packs, getting the having the ability to open a unique card from one of these is huge. Is absolutely huge. Like usually you play other TCGs and let's say you get a couple of wins under your belt. Here's a few packs, so you get a few packs, but sometimes you might not get like great cards, or you'll get promo cards, and the promo cards are like okay, but the difference with the unique card is like you can open this and it's not like, sure, you might be expecting, okay, I want to get a unique. If you open an OP booster, you don't get a unique. Maybe it's not as cool, but you never know what you're going to get from that pack, from that unique. You know what I mean? So it's like super exciting, and week to week, it really incentivizes you to keep playing. But I think, yeah, coming off the back of that major event, there was another big event in Europe as well. I think it was last weekend. It might have been the weekend before. But I was supposed to attend that event. Unfortunately, I was unable to. Some things happened last minute. But I think it was the event cap was supposed to be around 512 players. I'll have to double check the data to see how many players actually did show up to it. But it seems like the game within France is getting, a lot of support from tournament organizers and stuff who also support the game, which is great to see. And it's obviously a French company, and it's really nice. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. If there was a board game company or trading card game company that was did a Kickstarter, was from Ireland and started going global, I'd be all over it. I'd be like, oh my god, this is like what I was. So I think that's really cool, and a lot of the French should be super proud of what this game has been able to do and stuff. But I think that hype is like I said, it's important not to get too excited about that, because that's not happening all around the world. I think support around North America in particular, and you guys can talk this more than myself. Again, I feel like for the local communities, it's strong for the ones that are playing, but I do think that there needs to be kind of just more growth in general, more support for players. And there's different ways that this can happen, but I think my biggest takeaway, and I know this for a fact, but for any players that are out there thinking, oh, I'm not really seeing the scene grow as much as I'm kind of expecting and stuff, I know for a fact that this is a priority for Equinox. They do realize that growing these English speaking regions is a huge factor of what is going to make this game successful in the long term, and they do realize that. But I do think that from the community perspective, I think they are expecting to see a little bit more and see how they want to show that, how they want to grow the game. So seeing their presence at all of these convention events is super important in my opinion. At this PAX Unplugged event, we're talking about the tournaments and all the cool events that can be had, and that's great for any players that are already playing the game, that want to engage, want to do these more cool competitive events. But the biggest thing is, like, at least them being present at all of these events exposes the game to more people, and that's the biggest thing. A lot of people are going to find out about this game if they're going to these conventions anyways, and they're learning about the game. Oh, what's this cool trading card game? Let me go check it out. And that's something that they've also been doing very much within Europe. Last weekend as well, there was an event in Italy, Luca Comics, which is basically like kind of like an Essen Spiel, a big convention for I think a lot of comic book stuff, trading card games, and they were present at that as well. So that's one thing I think they're doing great, which is they're ensuring that they're being present at all of these major events, because I think they realize that's a huge way that they can introduce the game to many players rather than just online discovery and stuff like that. But I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on the American side, because I will still say in Europe, outside of France, I know pretty much, I mean, Ireland's a small place, right? I know pretty much like nearly every local game store within Ireland. There's maybe 2, maybe 3 stocking it at the moment, and they're fairly spread out. But in the capital in Dublin, there's only one. And the audience has been gradually growing over time, but I know my main local game store where I play Lorcana, there's Magic, there's Yu-Gi-Oh stuff. Like, I don't think it's them not trying to, oh, we don't want to support the game, or it's also this thing of, like I've mentioned as well, there's so many card games out at the moment. So for a lot of these stores, there is a financial thing as well, where, okay, can I actually afford to take on this new card game, and am I going to have a consistent player base? But I also do think if there's enough people that come to a store and say, I'm an Altered player, I want to have a locals here, I will buy product, I will come week to week, that's a big incentive for them as well. So I'm curious to hear And of course, I don't think we're ever going to hear this information because it's Equinox's business and stuff. But like the approach when they're talking to certain LGSs and stuff to try and incentivize them to take on the game, buy some product, get players involved, because I think that's a really important thing. And it's a difficult thing because trying to stand out in this world where we've got so many other trading card games, you know, you say the big three, you've got Magic, Pokemon, and Yu-Gi-Oh! If these are like the biggest financial factors for these local game stores to make money and stay open, like it is sometimes difficult to take on a new card game. And I'm sure there are other Kickstarters in the past that, you know, maybe some LGSs have taken on and they've been burned by or whatever. But I think in general, the reputation of Kickstarter games has actually gone up and has been like a lot better than what it has been in the past. But yeah, moving on to NA side, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on, you know, the growth over time, things maybe you'd like to see from Equinox to further support that scene. Because I could talk about Europe, but there's a very small English speaking scene within Europe, right? It's like Ireland, UK, and I suppose the rest of Europe as well. They will still play like an English card game, but it's also nice to have the game localized and stuff. But the biggest factor on having Altered succeed in the long term is definitely continuing to grow that US presence, right?
Yeah, I've been making some notes because I'm like, well, I had a lot of thoughts come up while you're talking, and I feel like they all like deserve to get shared at some point. Yeah, I mean, overall, I do have to say it's been kind of tough for, I feel like, North America and a lot of, it sounds like pretty much everywhere outside of maybe even just France. Even if it's doing better in some places than others, I don't think it's like been like super easy anywhere for things to grow. Mm-hmm. I feel like that one of the hardest things is a lot of people speculated really hard on Altered at the beginning. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like an expectations thing where it's like the higher you set your expectations, the higher that thing has to perform for people to be happy or whatever. And so I feel like it's tough because so many people got into Altered as like a financial thing who weren't even really interested in the game. And I think sometimes maybe scarcity is like a good thing for a game and it can get people more excited early on. But there are a couple of there's like a handful of big stores in the US that like bought so much product. It sounds like some of them bought like 5,000 or something, like displays or something like that. And it's like, so this handful of stores that were just like thinking this would be like the next game to be underproduced and like they could like get great margins on it. I don't know. There's just so many. There's a couple of people like that, and then like now they're like slashing their prices, and it's like making it harder maybe for some people to buy locally. Like I know for me, it's like, well, the local stores have like the highest price on the market and stuff, and it's just tough because it's like people were so excited for Altered when the Kickstarter was happening, and then afterwards, I think like it's done well, but it's one of those things where if you went to your local game store and there was only one box left on the shelf, maybe you'd be like, well, I don't want to miss out, I'm going to buy it. But when you go and there's like 6 and like it's like doesn't seem like they're moving, maybe you're like, oh, it's like the opposite now. You're like, and so I feel like it's tough because I feel like expectations were very, very high, and then I feel like it's just done all right. And in the past, I've often said like the phrasing I'll use is like, I'll be like, oh, Altered's being like well received when I went to like PAX West. And I think what I mean by that is it's like the people that try the game and people who get to experience it have a good experience. They like it. They want to buy it. And so I'd say like the people that try Altered, it's well received by them. When I go to like a locals and somebody wants to play for the first time, we teach it to them. Then they want to play it more. But while I think that the people that try it and whoever gets exposed to it likes it, I think that it's actually pretty small, like the number of people who are giving it a shot. So it's like kind of like a conflicting message, because while it is like a game that I wouldn't be embarrassed or afraid to show to a friend because I know that the people that try it like it, I think the hardest part is just that not quite as many people are giving it a chance as we'd hope, or maybe as like we need for the game to blow up. So yeah, it's just tough. It's just like there's so many expectations, and I don't know how you make more people give a game like a first shot to try. maybe if like there's like a free online way to play or something, but there is Board Game Arena with starter decks and things that people can give it a shot. And so maybe like that's what we should push more first, is let people try it without like a financial investment, then they can get hooked or something. But yeah, I don't know, it's pretty tough. And the next point I think is already kind of been mentioned. There's so many games in the market right now. I think the one that kind of has a grasp on the stores, at least near me, is Star Wars Unlimited at this point. And so I don't know if it's kind of like Star Wars Unlimited, Star Wars, that's always been like a big US thing. So it kind of might just be like that pride of like, that's like a little bit like a game that's coming from our country. And that's a game that has come out within like a half a year or something. Like it's pretty recent. And so when I go to my locals, there'll most of the time I've gone to a couple, there's like maybe like 4 to 8 on like the best days, but often like 4 people playing Altered. But then there'll be like 20 people playing Star Wars. And so it's tough. I mean, it's not always 20, but like 10 to 20 or something. And it seems like most of the people who want a new game that isn't like the big 3 right now, for us, they're playing Star Wars, and you can only play so many trading card games. And so if they're excited about Star Wars, they don't really have room to try Altered. And I don't really know how I would like convince them to put it down, because I do feel like they're both pretty good games. I feel like I don't think I could say yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned Star Wars, because that's also, I mean, let's be honest, I play every card game under the sun at this stage, but it's also a game I do enjoy a lot. But it's interesting you mentioned that, because it plays similarly enough to Altered in terms of it's this like, you know, I do something, you do something game, which is different from most other trading card games where it's like, okay, it's my turn, I will do multiple actions, and then it's your turn, you will do multiple actions. So yeah, I actually am intrigued as well, because I feel like there's a lot of crossover and there's a lot of opportunity for Star Wars players to try Altered, and probably Altered players to try that game as well, because there is a lot of similarity. The biggest difference is probably like you were mentioning. I would say maybe not so much about the, you know, Star Wars particularly being like a US thing, but it is another game with like this huge IP attached to it. And we know how well games do when there's this huge IP. Star Wars, Lorcana with Disney, let's see, like even just like Marvel Snap being a mobile card game, but it has Marvels, that's going to attract a huge amount of people to at least try the game and approach the game. So it's a difficult thing when you're, you know, you're your own IP and you want to try to get people invested into the game. So there is a lot of things, and I do hope as well that you know, the players that do try Altered and want to keep playing the game, there is enough support for them and enough not even just product, but you know, I'd hate to think that, okay, maybe some stores, oh, we've run out of OP packs and stuff, so people are like, okay, well, I don't really want to go and play Altered, because at the end of the day, a lot of people will want to go to locals to jam and have fun as well. But if you have this cool prize at the same time, it will entice a lot of people to come. You know what I mean? So I hope that's... I'm no idea what the case may be, and I'm sure it's different in many different places, but I hope that there's plenty of that product available for the stores that are supporting the game, because I'd hate to think that maybe some people are going and it's like, oh, we ran out of OP packs, or we don't have this, we don't have that. By the way, I'm not saying that is the case. I have no idea if that may be the case, but it's things like that to know, to keep in mind. But Alex, yeah, I'd be curious to hear your thought on the game in North America.
Yeah, so with Canada specifically, again, we've talked about it in the past, but it did have like a lag in its launch. Like we launched in Canada about a month after you guys did in Europe, and even later than what happened in the States. So I don't know what happened here. But what I will say is like it's been interesting and a little difficult at times. Like for instance, the first LGS I went to, first of all, none of my local LGSs cover it at all. Have any product, have any events happening. When I say local, I mean within like half hour. Driving distance,
yes,
right?
That's the same for me when I talk locally.
Yeah, and so I went to a couple places. Hey, are you going to be covering Altered TCG? And this is a place nearby that like, you know, has pretty decent crowds. They're like, what's that? Like that was the response from the store owner, and I was like, buddy. I was like, okay, and I'm like, I explained to him, showed it to him. He's like, oh yeah, cool. He's like, actually, I think I heard of this, but no, we're not doing it. I'm like, okay, cool. So I went to another place again. They didn't even know what it was. The third place I went to, they actually had heard of it, but said they weren't going to be covering it. So then what ultimately happened was there's a store, and again, I'm near the Toronto region. Like, this is a huge metropolitan city in Canada, okay? This is a massive city, and there's only like 3 places doing anything anywhere near me, one of which happens to be about 35 to 40 minutes away. However, I saw anyone so much as sneezes on the highway, it's an hour and 20 minutes, but that's a whole other conversation. So anyways, and what's interesting is the LGS owner actually competed in Phoenix. And so, like, they're an avid Altered player. Like, they are a legit Altered player, and that's why they're hosting it at their store. Like, they are literally, like, they're a player. They are a believer of Altered, and they own an LGS. And that's why that this particular location is running it. And, I mean, and I've had the chance to meet Jan, and he's a great dude, and he actually does a great job of, like, trying to organize localized events and stuff. But even still, you're looking at show-ups of, like, you know, between 4 and 8 people at the Altered events, right? And so it's like, it's tricky because, like, first of all, the people I'm meeting, and this is one of the best things about card games, honestly, is getting the opportunity to sit across from someone who's enjoying the same game that you are. You have similar passions, getting to meet people, joining those Discords, stuff like that. That's like amongst the best parts of it. And I think it's something that's sorely lacking in something like a BGA experience, right? You can play Altered TCG on BGA. You don't get the same experience of saying GG's, fist bumping the person across, win or lose, it doesn't matter, right? And even as someone who, like, I mean, I come from Marvel Snap. That is my primary game, which I'm most known for on my primary channel. And you don't have that personal interaction. Like, that social element is completely gone from those games. And so the LGS is so important, I believe, to what these games can do to be successful. And I'm going to go a little bit off the deep end here. And I gave this a lot of thought. I was thinking about what kept me on the World of Warcraft train. And this was years ago. I had a million reasons to stop playing World of Warcraft, you know, in my 20s, but I kept playing. And I thought about why. And it wasn't because the game was particularly good. It wasn't because I was, trying to grind gear. It was because I was in a guild. It was because we did raids on Thursday nights, and these people were relying on me to be their healer. And it was this social network that I had built around World of Warcraft that had kept me glued into that scene. And even though I kind of I don't feel like playing Warcraft, but you know what? They need me there, and I want to talk to my friends. And it became a social thing, a social club more than anything else. And so I don't want to dismiss how important the LGSs are to the success of a game like Altered TCG. Because when you go to an LGS and you see similar faces and you play against similar people and you deck brew with each other and you help each other and you trade cards and you trade uniques and you lend uniques and you do all these things that LGSs can do, suddenly it becomes much more of a community feel. And I am much more incentivized to go on a weekly basis. I want to interact with the friends that I'm making, and I'm sure they feel the exact same way. And so for me, especially where I am in Canada, to only have one place within 45 minutes almost of driving distance that covers Altered TCG is kind of heartbreaking. And I wish I could change it, but I really can't. I'm only one guy. I don't do distribution or anything like that, right? I can only try and get the word out, and that's exactly what all 3 of us have tried to do for this game. And in our own ways, I feel like we have been some of the best ambassadors we can be for Altered TCG in our respective areas. And ultimately, I just really hope that they can figure out a way to encourage more LGSs to give the game a shot. We just need to get the ball rolling a little bit, because especially in Canada, it does feel pretty barren.
Yeah, and I think that's true here too. A couple other the knife I feel like was twisted when you were like, I go to these stores and they say, you ask them about Altered and they say, what's that? How many times have I heard that? So many times, especially I was asking stores around the Kickstarter, no one knew what it was. And then even more recently, close to the release of the game, it is just hard that a lot of people say that. I think it's hard too, because with the Kickstarter rollout, you were saying there's 2 types of product. People like me have bought already way too much Kickstarter product. So now I'm not going to the store wanting to buy a ton of the regular retail version. So it's you almost need new people to be buying the retail. But if most of the players already bought into the Kickstarter, it's you have this group of people ready to play, but then the store isn't seeing people buy. Hopefully with set 2 that can get switched around. With the promo packs, like you were mentioning, Kawa, it's tough. Some of these stores bought 8 of the retail boxes, and I think that's maybe the minimum you had to buy to get promo boosters. Mm-hmm. And some of them haven't received promo boosters yet, and so it's a little tough because I think you've got like Asmodee and Equinox working together there. But it's like, if you can't get the promo booster prizes, it's going to be a lot harder for you to get people to come into your store specifically, and then it's going to be harder for you to move product. So like that is a little bit tough right now. And I think one of the hardest things for me too is like every time I'm like, I loved when I used to like play Yu-Gi-Oh and things, I'd go to a store for an event, there would be people there with like the top meta decks. It'd be like the like highest level of competition, maybe not quite, but like it felt like it was tight. I wanted to get better to be able to do better against them. It's kind of like fulfilling. We're both all buying more product, opening packs, excited to build decks. But it feels like right now, almost every time I go to an event, we're like almost 2 months in, and it's the people there are just like opening a starter deck and playing it for like the first time that day or whatever. And so it's like pretty much all that I've seen at the 2 stores that I go to is starter deck or like just barely edited starter decks that are being played. So it's tough. It's like I build my deck the night before I go, and then I don't even open it, and I just like ask to borrow a starter deck or something so that I don't like crush these people who are just getting into the game.
That's a really interesting point you make, because that's something that we've talked about a lot within our local Lorcana scene, because we often have a lot of people coming into the store hearing about Lorcana for the first time, probably bringing a starter deck to play and stuff. And there's been a lot of mixed thoughts about this within our like local kind of group chat, to say like, oh, maybe we're the problem. Maybe we're like all so much playing like our meta decks and stuff at locals that some new person comes in, plays with a starter deck, gets absolutely smashed, and then just leaves and then never comes back. And I have the argument to say, well, hold on a second. I'm like, we're all nice people here. So I remember the first time I came to the local game store, and Lorcana was my first physical card game. I'd played card games before, sure, but I agree with you, Alex. I'm like, I go for, and I especially go now for this social element. The first time I went, these people were very welcoming. People are gonna have better decks than me. People are gonna know more about the game than me. But I ask them questions and I want to learn. And that's like the really fun thing to me. If I'm a new player, exactly like you, Trickster. Like if I'm coming to a store, that's the type of thing I would. If I'm a new player, I would want to ask the more experienced players, or the opposite. If I'm an experienced player, like in that situation for you, like I'd want to be like, talking to the starter decks, doing that, and then like, oh, this is like a deck I made, and kind of showcasing the potential, get them thinking about, oh, what can I do with this game after using the starter deck. And it's like, it's this whole process. And I often find it interesting as well how much we care about the game and how much we want to see it grow, but also in the perspective of an LGS owner. Like these comparisons, right? Like they're thinking about it from a monetary perspective. We're thinking about it from, well, we just want to play and want to support the scene. There's like so many similarities and so many things to consider, so many factors. But yeah, I think everything that both of you said there is actually quite a similar thing to where I'm located as well, where I've asked let's say my main local game store, the most accessible one to me, if they're picking up the product. And it could be the case that they have heard of the game, but it's just a bit of a risk to take it up at the moment, right? Whether that be because it's a Kickstarter product, or like I said, this might not be the case in many LGSs, but since mine is in like a capital city, like I don't know, Alex, but let's say there was one in like smack bang in the middle of Toronto. They do card games for everything. They could just say, yeah, like we don't have the space or the time to run a new card game, because there is so many card games at the moment. So it's really trying to make the case and showcase to these retailers that, why should you carry this product? Like, and it's hard to really promise, oh, well, like you will get the players, you will be able to do the product. Like you said, then Trickster, for these other places are selling boxes online for cheaper, it's very hard for a local game store to actually make money and stay financially successful. Like, you know what I mean? So there's so many factors that come into it. But I don't know. I have faith that, the game is incredibly fun to play. They're continuing to kind of get the word out there. I hope we really do see like a big marketing push for set 2, and maybe that will bring a new influx of players into the game coming into the new year and stuff like that. Because we all want to see the game succeed. Like I just want to make clear, as much as we're talking about like some of the issues within, maybe the game not growing as much as certain regions, all of this is because we want to see the game grow. You know what I mean? I think it's important to highlight these issues so we can all consider our options. Like I want to echo exactly what Alex said. this is a direct thing to Equinox. If there's anything that the three of us can do to really help grow the game in any shape or form, I know we are all more than willing to do it and help keep the game going. So yeah, I think overall that was a great discussion that we had. I think we all shared a lot of ideas and thoughts about how the game's going. My biggest concern now, honestly, myself, is I really hope we can have a good, steady, consistent growth of players and just consistent players playing in locals for the next 2, maybe 3 months until set 2. But I do think as more things get announced for set 2, I think that will start to build up some hype. So maybe we get some players coming back into it. But yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I feel like I too just hope people can hold on just long enough, because I feel like it's like things are maybe going in a good direction, even if slowly.
Mhm.
And I just hope that like we can just keep everyone we have and then only add to it, so that like things can just like really take off soon. I think a couple things that I like see helping that could definitely improve things. There's a lot of people too that do like local discords, and I have some of those as well, like Pacific Northwest discords. It's tough because it's like kind of disappointing when you go to an event one week and no one's there, right? But if you can have one of these discords, I can like talk with the people, see who's going, and then a group of us are like, oh, like one guy's like, this Friday I want to go, I'm gonna bring my trades, and I'm like, nobody ever has their trades, no one's ever like ready. I'm like, I'll go too because you're gonna be there. So it's like, if you can get the contact information, make like a Discord for like the people that you do meet at an event, then maybe you can do some of this coordinating and kind of get all the critical mass to show up at one time. Maybe there's only 10 Altered players in the area, but if you like once a month all show up at the same time, that'll probably be a lot better experience than if you all show up on different days all throughout the month. So I think like stuff like that can help. And I've heard like store championships and things are on the way for set 2. So there's going to be a lot more like of a reward for participating. The online adventure pass and stuff right now is great, but I do feel like hopefully in set 2 too, some of these things, like some stores didn't get promo packs. You'd think now that they're a little more established, they'll be able to roll it out hopefully globally at the same time. And I think one thing that could help a lot that I'm praying is right around the corner is the online marketplace. I feel like a lot of these people with a starter deck, if they can now go online, see fair prices, and hopefully for a reasonable amount, just like buy some of those rares they need to complete their decks. Hopefully having that marketplace can be kind of like that last step to get people from like their 40 card piles to something that's looking a little more competitive. And then that just makes everyone a little bit more excited and invested in the games they're playing. I also think too, with like the trade scene right now, so often I'm like, do you have any trades? And everyone says no. Or like, they're like, I pulled uniques, but I'm playing a deck with no uniques. And like, I don't know. A lot of people just don't know what to do with these unique cards. It's something that's pretty new. People are used to a game where you know what the best cards are. You can see online, you can like net deck. But when you have to take a unique that you have that no one else has and figure out how to put it into a deck, it just like expects a lot more from the players. And for some people who are just starting, they're just not really ready to assess these or know what to do with them. And so I hope with like a marketplace and a little bit of like a resource, people can be a little bit more confident making trades and being comfortable with that. So I think that like that will probably be a big boost so that people can get a little bit of a grasp on maybe the value of their cards, be ready to trade theirs, or excited to get something that they see that they like can tell online does look good. So I think a lot of these changes that are hopefully coming soon and like things that you can do just by like coordinating with your local people can improve that experience, and will hopefully get this kind of like to where we want it to be going into set 2.
One thing that I will add, and I think that is, you bring up a lot of really important points. And Kawa, you had mentioned the idea of like, well, hopefully for set 2, we got set championships, we have all these things happening. I think it has to happen sooner than that. And as someone who plays a lot of different stuff, and like, you know, we joke about, we mention Lorcana way too often in this podcast, by the way, so we may as well just lean into it here. Kawa, if you think about what my experience with Lorcana is, right? I play the game, I buy some stuff, I have some product. But when I take a season off, right, there's like a lag where I feel like I have fallen behind. And when you came to Toronto for the DLC event, I didn't play my own deck. You said, hey, Alex, here's a European championship winning deck. Play this. You just handed me a championship winning deck that if I had to buy on my own would have cost me like $800, right? And so I took that deck in there. We had a lot of fun. But what I'm trying to say is if you're waiting to set 2 to do the championships, there's a good chance that people will feel like, oh, hey, remember, with the release of a new set, the deck lists become more refined, the combos become tighter, and there is kind of like an increase of general power level of the decks and the archetypes. If someone feels like they have fallen behind and they can't really catch up without spending a lot of money, that might like not incentivize them to actually get involved in the first place. For me to like jump into Star Wars, for instance, which a game I have not played very much, I feel like it would require a major commitment for me because I don't have anything from what came before. The fact that we're still in the base set of Altered TCG means that people have not missed out on much. There isn't much of a ladder to climb to get caught back up with where we are. But if we're talking 2 sets down the road, suddenly they look at that backlog and it feels like an obstacle they can't overcome. It feels like a barrier to entry that already entering a TCG is hard enough. The amount of domain knowledge you need to get started in a TCG is so unbelievably difficult, okay? You're not picking up Vampire Survivors here and just, playing a game and having fun. You are legitimately having to learn how to deck build, learn how to play, right? You have to commit energy to being good at a game like this. Not even good, but just competent at building decks, making sure the synergies work together. There's a lot of effort that goes into a TCG and not even being competitive, just enjoying it. Because as you said, Kawa, you show up with your starter deck and you sit across from a tournament-winning Trickster who absolutely smashes you with his Lyra deck. You're like, where are these Kaibara coming from and why are they all anchored? How does this gamer roll 6s all the time? You're just going to take your starter pack and you're going to put it in the trash on the way out. You know what I mean? So I have a concern with the idea of not doing those set championships before set 2 comes out. Because I don't want people to look at these I know you release the sets because you want to keep things fresh, you want to keep things interesting. This game is interesting. It is fresh, but we need people in the ecosystem. And so that's why maybe I'm a little happy that it's at the end of January. Give us more time to get on, to onboard people, get people into the ecosystem, because more sets might actually just equal more hurdles for a new player.
Yeah, I want to echo what Trickster said as well. And it's something even I feel like at the moment, because while I can play on BGA and I'm playing like certain decks, we talked about this a few weeks ago, I think, but I really do want to have this system in place where I can go onto this online marketplace and just fill in the gaps for my rare cards I'm missing. Because right now, I cannot do that without... But obviously it's a trading card game. I can try go to my locals. I can see what people have. But like you said as well, Trickster, I feel like a lot of times when I do ask for trades, people are like, I don't really have anything to trade besides my uniques, because they're equally... there's a lot of cards within this initial card pool, right? There is a lot. And with any card game, if you buy, let's just say you buy 2 booster boxes, that's still not going to be enough to get you every single card for the set. So I think it's really important to have this system in place where you're able to fill in these gaps so people can feel like they can kind of build up their collection and actually play nearly as many decks as they want to. Because I'll be the first to admit that there are some decks that I want to try out that, I look at, say, a template that you built, Trickster, and I'll get some inspiration. And it'll have maybe 5 rare cards that I don't have. So I'm like, okay, naturally, right, I'll just run the common versions and I'll put in some other rares. I'm like, okay, quickly understand, right, the rare version of this is so much better than the common. I really wish I had that. And there are ways I can get it. There are some stores where, they do sell singles and binders, or you can just buy them off them online, so then at least you can play them in BGA. But I'm sure there's also this probably... In a certain circumstance, there's a large portion of people who have I bought cards off of an LGS or a retailer so that I can play them all on Board Game Arena. But Trickster, let's say you buy some cards off someone within Europe to complete your collection. Well, the print on demand system's not in there. So if you want to go to a tournament, what can you do in that situation? Because even though you digitally own the card, you don't have it physically at the moment. So I'm actually curious in that situation, can we do a situation that if you digitally own the card, you still need to have a physical, you can't use a proxy and then show that you still digitally own the card. Do you know if we can do that or not? Because if not, this print on demand, if I want to buy a card from someone in America and then play a local event, I have it online, I have it in my digital collection, but I don't have it, you know what I mean? So
yeah, it's an interesting question. I do feel we always say the marketplace, but I think print on demand needs to come just as fast. So I think the story is, from what I've heard, it's just you kind of can make your own rules, right? It's you've got 4 people here to say the store can say whatever they want to make them happy. Mm-hmm. From what I've heard, most stores if you just print out like a picture and you play your unique, they're totally fine with that.
Mhm.
Most of them are just having open play and not even having a tournament at this point. So it's like, I feel like it's pretty much up to you. I print a lot of pictures and I use them in some of my decks. It just doesn't really make sense to pay a lot of money to ship it from
Exactly. Yeah.
like Europe to here. So I just like use it online, print the pictures. I think that, yeah, that I would definitely encourage anyone else to just do that as a placeholder. If someone really isn't okay with that, I'd be pretty surprised. I have cards that I bought from Europe where people are like, oh, we're going to send it without tracking. I haven't seen them. It's been a month. I'm like, so I'm kind of just waiting on print on demand for those. I also feel like right now, like sometimes you kind of get caught in a tough spot where there's no print on demand, and I'll buy a card digitally from someone. And then I'll be like, well, actually, I do want to run this in a tournament. I reached out to that person and I'm like, hey, can I get the physical from you or whatever? And they'll be like, yeah, for like $10, $15 or something. And I'm like, wow, now it's like they're trying to like squeeze me because they're the only way I can get the physical so far. I've been waiting for print on demand. It's supposed to be like 70 cents or something, but it's like, well, now I'm paying like $10 to $15 for a piece of paper that's worth 70 cents and hopefully like a month. Like, I guess they kind of got me. I can't do anything about it, but you know.
Yeah, I think like it's something that I don't know by any means, but some of these larger companies, the singles market within TCGs, right? Like it's probably not something they need to think about that much because most of their card games, it's just, people buy product, they sell cards online, and it is what it is, right? But with this game, because you can buy the cards digitally, but if they don't want to send, because you don't have to send the cards physically because of how the system's in place, well, then the singles market is in a weird spot. And like equally, like maybe that's not like a huge priority for like, I think basically the crux of what I'm trying to say is the company still needs to understand that if the singles market is in a weird space, it means that the game is still less accessible to some extent. Because there's some people, like, I think there's many people that will come into card games. I know so many that have come into Lorcana that haven't bought starter decks because they know, like, if they want to try out the game, sure, a starter deck is a good place. But people coming into a game like Lorcana where they want to just start with a really good meta deck, they'll go onto like either TCG Player or Card Market, and they'll build up their collection and they'll buy the cards, or they'll buy like half of the deck and then try and borrow some cards or trade some cards and stuff like that. But if the cards aren't as accessible and you want to be playing them physically at tournaments, it is a little bit weird at the moment. And I hope that the marketplace and the print on demand system is like something that they're really focused on. Like, I really, really hope we see these come into effect before set 2. Like, I actually think it's crucial that it comes into effect before set 2, but we'll see.
Oh, without question. And I want to foil some stuff, damn it. Come on, let's go.
Oh, yeah. All of our foilers? Yeah, come on.
The only thing about foils, by the way, I don't know if this has happened to you guys, but the foils I got, well, from Europe, because they're the only ones we can get right now, mine are warping. Like, I don't know what it is. Mine have, like, a cook to them. I don't know if it's because my house, like, I live near a lake or whatever, but I'm like, bro, what's happening here? But anyways, that's a whole other conversation. What I will say, though, is that, Kawa, you bring up a good point about the actual, like, the capabilities of the system, the print-on-demand stuff. But not just that, I believe LGSs can't currently host tournaments within the software yet. I think that's also on the digital roadmap where they're able to do like some sort of, I think they're getting like an actual interface for hosting proper Altered tournaments. Like I guess for deck submissions, all digitally verification, et cetera, instead of like doing the pen and paper deck submission type thing. So I think there's a lot of stuff kind of in the works still. And I believe in August, they released this, maybe was it August, maybe July or June. In the summer anyways, they released like an updated digital roadmap, and I believe the print on demand and the tournament infrastructure for LGSs were pushed into the later quarter. So that might be a factor worth thinking about. But guys, we are so over time here. What a discussion that we had here this week. We have a lot to talk about next week as well, so be sure to subscribe. If you're not subscribed already, guys, thank you so much for all your support. Trickster, Kawa, love you guys. I'm glad that the crew was able to get together once again. Hopefully we can do it again next week, and we'll see you on that next one.